In May 1940, over 300,000 British servicemen scanned the skies in dread, clinging to a sliver of hope for rescue from the sands of Dunkirk, or facing annihilation by the shrieking Junkers Ju-87 Stukas in their scorching dive bomb runs. Trapped with the German Wehrmacht on one side and the treacherous sea on the other, destruction loomed from above. The men's eyes widened in terror as the Stuka's banshee scream rang. They hit the deck, bracing for oblivion, yet deliverance came from above as a fury unleashed. A squadron of fighters tore through the cloud shielded by the sun, their guns blazing a hailstorm of bullets, intercepting and shredding the Stuka. The silhouette was iconic, the sleek elliptical wings, a warplane of unmatched agility, powered by the roaring thunder of the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. The British Spitfire was not about to abandon the men cornered at Dunkirk. Hermann Göring, the commander of the Luftwaffe, had promised Adolf Hitler the complete destruction of the British Expeditionary Force before any rescue could materialize. However, the heroic Spitfire pilots, steering the apex of aerial combat engineering at the time, strongly disagreed. The Spitfire has a unique place among the most iconic warplanes of World War II, as it was the only fighter in production before, through, and after the war. This was no mistake. It was an incredible demonstration of the supreme adaptability and raw power of the Supermarine Spitfire and the dedication and forward vision of its designer. R.J. Mitchell cut his teeth on aircraft design during World War I, acutely aware of the fragility of early aircraft and prioritizing pilot safety above all. Even when pushing the envelope for speed in the Schneider Trophy races, Mitchell never compromised on safety. His crowning achievement, the Spitfire, was not only aesthetically stunning but also a rugged, versatile marvel that pilots revered. Mitchell's quest to create a top-notch fighter interceptor initially stumbled with the Supermarine Type 224. Powered by a steam-cooled Rolls-Royce Griffin engine, it limped to a top speed of just 230 miles per hour, well below the Air Ministry's modest requirement of 250 miles per hour for an all-metal four-gun fighter. Dubbed Spitfire by the managing director of Vickers Supermarine, this initial failure set the stage for Mitchell's relentless pursuit of excellence. Undeterred, Mitchell was already deep into the design of the far superior Type 300, collaborating with Rolls-Royce, who were developing a groundbreaking new engine soon to be known as the Merlin. Initially a private venture, this partnership gained the backing of the Air Ministry, which crafted its fighter specification, F-16/36, around Mitchell's innovative design. Construction of the prototype 300, registered as K5054, began in December 1934. It took to the skies for its maiden test flight at Eastleigh, Southampton, on March 5, 1936, piloted by Vickers chief test pilot Joseph Mutt Summers. The aircraft featured a sleek, narrow fuselage with elliptically tapered wings, an enclosed cockpit and closely set undercarriage wheels that retracted flush into the wing cavities to reduce stress. The landing setup included telescopic oleo legs and a tail skid, initially sporting a two-blade, fixed-pitch wooden propeller and a Merlin C engine. As he made the final modifications to his ultimate design, Mitchell was diagnosed with cancer. He continued to work despite rapidly growing pain, tweaking the design up to the moment of his passing in June 1937. He was able to see his prototype fly, but he could only imagine what his warplane would accomplish. Now, under the supervision of Mitchell's longtime collaborator and successor Joseph Smith, the transformation of the Spitfire into the unmatched machine of war, it was meant to be continued. After in-depth consultations with Royal Air Force technical gurus, the armament for the new Spitfire fighter was locked in at 8 Browning .303 machine guns. These guns were essentially Colt .30s produced under license but modified to chamber the British-rimmed cartridges. Positioned 4 per wing, this setup was groundbreaking at the time and allowed the guns to fire outside the propeller's arc, eliminating the need for the older plane's interrupter gear. Smith also streamlined the construction and design to gear up the Spitfire for mass production, bringing Mitchell's vision to life. The first Mark I, K9789, rolled out with No. 19 Squadron at RAF Duxford on August 4, 1938, though the initial batch was equipped with just 4 machine guns due to a dire shortage of Brownings. The early Mark I boasted a service ceiling of 31,900 feet and could zip through the skies at 315 miles per hour at 30,000 feet. Their top speed hit 362 miles per hour at 18,500 feet, with a cruising speed of 210 miles per hour at 20,000 feet and an economical range of 575 miles. Their combat range extended to 395 miles, including takeoff and 15 minutes of intense aerial combat. Several vital upgrades had been made by the time the Spitfire scored its first victory, downing a German Heinkel He 111 bomber on October 16, 1939, while flying the skies above the 5th of 4th. A blister-shaped cockpit was added, rounding off the legendary Spitfire silhouette with iconic elliptical wings and robust all-metal monocoque body, where the skin itself is integral to the aircraft's structure. The cockpit's windscreen plastic was swapped out for armored glass, and a protective armor plate was installed at the rear of the engine bulkhead. A power-operated pump now worked the undercarriage, and the tail skid had been upgraded to a more practical wheel. The Merlin Mark II engines were being phased out in favor of the more advanced Mark III, which featured an improved air screw shaft, and the two-blade wooden propeller was replaced by a de Havilland three-blade metal two-pitch propeller, significantly boosting the plane's climb performance. During the fall of France in May 1940, the rapid advance of German forces cornered the British Expeditionary Force and their allies on the beaches of Dunkirk. The situation looked dire, with an unstoppable panzer force bearing down on them. General Alan Brooke penned his despair, quote, "Nothing but a miracle can save the BF now." In a perplexing decision that stunned his own generals, Hitler ordered his tanks to halt for repairs, confident that the trapped British forces were doomed and that Hermann Göring's mighty Luftwaffe could wipe them out from the air. Thus began the relentless bombing of Dunkirk. In response, Britain launched a colossal rescue operation known as Operation Dynamo. The Spitfire, alongside the Hawker Hurricane, provided crucial air cover for the evacuation. These fighters took on German aircraft that were bombing the beaches and the rescue ships, playing a pivotal role in shielding the retreating troops. On May 26, 1940, the Royal Air Force threw every available aircraft into the fray, including Spitfires from No. 19 Squadron to cover the operation. Squadron leader Geoffrey Stevenson, piloting a Spitfire from RAF Duxford, soared over the English Channel to defend his fellow soldiers stranded on the beaches and on the vessels striving to carry them to safety. The aerial battles over the Channel and Dunkirk were fierce and chaotic. Despite being outnumbered, British Spitfire and Hurricane pilots had to strike a balance between caution and aggression against overwhelming German forces. Unbeknownst to them, pilots like Stevenson were at the controls of what would become the war's most fearsome fighter plane. With its agility and swift responsiveness, the Spitfire proved an unmatched adversary in dogfights. Stevenson's first combat sortie in the formidable Spitfire was a baptism by fire. As military and civilian ships below made desperate bids for England, Stevenson engaged German bombers targeting them. He claimed his first victory by downing a Junkers Ju-87 Stuka, watching it spiral into the Channel in a flaming wreck. However, the sheer number of German aircraft soon overwhelmed him, and he was shot down, crash-landing on the beach at Sangatte, near Calais, where he was captured. Despite this setback, Stevenson and his fellow Spitfire pilots sent a clear message. The Luftwaffe alone would not suffice to crush the BEF at Dunkirk, not on the Spitfire's watch. Thanks to the heroics of the men in the air, on land, and at sea, including those piloting the Spitfire over the English Channel, Operation Dynamo pulled off a success against all odds. The British Expeditionary Force was evacuated, living to fight another day. As the war kicked into high gear, so did the career of the Spitfire. The significance of the Spitfire soared during the Battle of Britain following France's fall. This aircraft was pivotal in defending Britain from the German air onslaught, part of the groundwork for a planned invasion of the British Isles. Throughout this fierce battle, Spitfires clashed relentlessly with German fighters, especially the formidable Messerschmitt Bf 109. The Spitfire's stellar maneuverability and potent firepower allowed it to go toe-to-toe with the German threat, which was crucial for keeping British skies in Allied hands. The Battle of Britain heralded the rise of numerous Spitfire aces, who became nightmares for German pilots. Among them was Douglas Bader, who downed numerous enemy planes, despite having lost both legs before his capture by the Germans in 1941. The Spitfire's role stretched beyond mere combat. It also undertook reconnaissance missions, showcasing its versatility to adapt and serve in various capacities throughout the war. As the conflict intensified, so did the development of the Spitfire, with multiple variants rolling out to meet diverse combat needs and conditions. The evolution of these Spitfire variants was a direct response to the emergence of more powerful enemy aircraft, like the Messerschmitt Bf 109 and the Focke-Wulf 190. Which also saw upgrades as the war escalated. Another driver for the diverse lineup of supermarine models was the aircraft's proven effectiveness and the burgeoning demand for new roles, ranging from photo reconnaissance to specialized carrier-based versions like the Supermarine Seafire or as escort fighters. Each adaptation ensured the Spitfire remained as versatile and deadly as the conflict demanded. The Spitfire ended up with 24 distinct variants, culminating in over 20,400 units built, with the final batch of Supermarine Spitfires delivered in June 1949. The aircraft featured 4 different wing types, each tailored to specific armaments. The iconic elliptical wing was eventually modified to a square tip to boost the fighter's maneuverability. The Type A and B wings sported either 8 Browning machine guns or a combination of 2 Hispano cannons with 4 machine guns. The Type C wing, known as the Universal Fit, could lug 250 pounds of bombs. Meanwhile, the Type D wing, designated for reconnaissance missions, traded armament for additional fuel capacity to extend its range. A key differentiator among the Spitfire marks was the introduction of more potent Merlin engines. For instance, the Mark V, which housed the enhanced Merlin 45 or 50 series inline piston engine, played a pivotal role during pivotal events such as the Dieppe raid, the D-Day landings, and Soviet defensive maneuvers in 1943. The Mark VI was engineered for high-altitude engagements, featuring a pressurized cockpit and elongated wings for intercepting high-flying foes. Notably, the Mark X, a reconnaissance variant, was equipped with specialized cameras and extra fuel storage. Substantial design updates came with the Mark XIV, which boasted a bubble canopy, an expanded tail fin, and a lengthier fuselage. The subsequent Mark XVI, tailored for ground attacks, was armed with 12.7mm heavy machine guns and saw significant action during Operation Market Garden and the liberation of France in late 1944. The final Spitfire models, from the Mark 21 to the Mark 24, were powered by the robust Rolls-Royce Griffon 61, 64, and 85 engines, delivering over 2,400 horsepower. These versions featured a teardrop canopy, an enlarged tail gin, a contra-rotating propeller assembly, and a streamlined fuselage spine. The naval counterpart, the Supermarine Seafire, was ruggedized for carrier operations and saw combat from North Africa to the Pacific, squaring off against the Japanese Empire. The last operational Spitfire was retired from the Irish Air Corps in 1961, sealing its legacy as one of the most influential fighters ever. Its production spanned the entirety of the war and beyond, marking it as the sole fighter manufactured before, during, and after World War II. From high-altitude reconnaissance to naval operations, the Spitfire was a testament to British engineering and wartime necessity.